What's up, it's Father Moo here.
No, I'm not going to use a robot voice today. I'm going to use my real voice. Hey, it's Father Moo. Last day of January. I had an amazing time this month participating for the first time. And I thought for my very last upload, rather than record a new piece of music, I thought I'd go back and do a little bit of a retrospective on the music I made over the last 20 years or so. I've been doing home recording since around the year 2000. Maybe started a little bit earlier than that, but I first had a complete home studio right about the year 2000. So I thought let's start by listening to some old music I made back then. The dates of the file names here is 2022. It's not accurate because the files have been copied and pasted over. But for example, this EP was made, I think, in 2002 when I took a vacation to Thailand. And what I did was I cut up a bunch of recordings from dub and reggae and then sort of pasted them back together again. So let's take a listen. Let's try this one here. Okay, yeah, so that was the Winter Mute dub from that old EP of mine, which is named 40,000 Miles Above the Black Ark. As I recall, most of that would have been made in Reason, which is still in a very early version of that software back then. It's really just samples and effects mostly, no synths. And the samples, as I said, coming from old reggae music. What's in here? This music would be very... Well, let's just go through it anyway. I made some very odd music at this time. This stuff is would have been similar to what you call microsound, and I took some incredibly heavily processed hip-hop breaks and added some strange digital music from the Nord Micromodular. This whole EP is so short. Let's just listen to the whole thing. Here's 3 very strange tracks. And by the way, if you're listening on headphones, there's some very high-pitched tones in these recordings. So you might want to back off the volume if you don't like that kind of thing. Fair warning. Here we go. So this is the Micro Graffiti EP. Okay, so that was the Micro Graffiti EP, all three tracks of it. And I don't know, I can imagine people out there being like, what the hell was that? And that's okay. I made this music as experiments and for my own amusement, and I still listen to this stuff I regularly, and I distinctly remember making those break beats in Reason and loading the some classic breaks into the thing called Recycle, like a sample slicer. And then to get the fake scratching sounds, I would use the pitch and the mod wheels that the mod assigned to filter cutoff. You can actually get a pretty similar sound that sounds like someone is scratching a record, but it's just sample manipulation. So after recording the entire track's worth of those beats, I then took a vocoder and the audio source for the vocoder, instead of a voice, was those breaks, and the modulator that processed it was a recording of just vinyl cracks and pops. So that's how I made those very mangled break beats that you hear there. I remember the process, although I haven't actually done that in ages, but I guess it's good that I remember. So I don't think I'll subject you to my singing voice in the covers section. I'll just skip that for now. However, although this stuff isn't on my website, if you like it and you want to hear something, you can always send me a message through YouTube. This one has a good track. I remember this is called DX7 Feng Shui. I bought a DX7 here in Taipei. Someone was selling it for like a couple $100 in a keyboard store. They didn't really know what they had or what it was. And I didn't know how to program it, but I sure liked the presets. And here's a track. As I recall, if this one has drums, they probably came from the Nord Micro Modular, but the keyboard playing is from the DX7. Well, everything in this EP is DX7. Let's take a listen. Oh, sorry, these drums are from a Game Boy Nano Loop cartridge. Okay, so that's that song. So, yeah, one of the reasons I make these recordings is because I know when you collect hardware synthesizers, as I do, they tend to break down over time, or even if you love one of them, you may have to move and sell it if you live a transient lifestyle like mine. So it's great to have that recording and have a little snapshot of that synth and its sound, so that even if you don't have the synth anymore, you can still listen to how it sounded. So yeah, the two melody lines there, and or I guess one chord and one melody from the DX7, plus the bass line as well, and then the percussion, some of it which was like tuned to the key of C minor, is all coming from the Nanoloop 1.0 software on a Game Boy. So the noise floor is kind of high there. Part of that is the Game Boy, part of that is the DX7 itself. But I find it quite a calming, sort of hissing sound. I do honestly believe that, I don't want to sound like I'm bragging here, but in 2001 is when I first got 2 copies of the Nanoloop cartridge from a guy named Oliver Witchow in Germany, who sent them to me after I contacted him online. And Nanoloop was, at the time, the only real software for the Game Boy that allowed you to turn it into a little synthesizer. As I recall, it was 4-bit FM synthesis for 2 channels. And there was a 3rd channel of noise synthesis to let you do drum patterns or percussion type sounds. And it's just like 16-step pattern sequencing. You can save many patterns, and then you can flip between them and mute them and unmute them in real time to make a backing track, which is how I made that percussion line, or the background percussion and other tuned bleeps for that piece of music. So I guess what I'm saying was I was making chiptunes music before chiptunes was a genre, but that would be a silly thing to claim because the real chiptunes music was from the 80s on the Commodore 64 and Galaga and all the old school video games. So like I was there after the event of real chiptunes, but prior to the revival that we now call chiptunes. I don't know. I'm not taking credit for it. I'm just saying I was doing it, and I loved those sounds. Luckily, I still have those Nanoloop cartridges. The Game Boys themselves have come and gone, but I have at least one working cartridge, and I'm very thankful that I still have the chance to use that when I need to. Let's go on to something else. So we've been in this EPs folder. Let's leave Bongwater Blues and go into Cruft World. So 2008, I was living in China, and I decided to build a small studio at home, collect a bunch of instruments, and one of the first things I wanted to do was go back to my rock band from the 90s and re-record the music we made then, not because I could do it better, because I couldn't, but just because I wanted to. I remembered those songs, and I was like, what if I remake them today by playing the guitar and, using some break beats for the drums? And I sang the vocal parts. And then I went on and did some other cover tunes here. Some of these are by the artists here are all me. I just had a bunch of fake names. But this one is you can recognize "Where Is My Mind" is a song by that band. What's their name? Oh man, I can't believe I'm blanking on this right now. The band with Frank Black, the Pixies. But like I said, we're gonna avoid listening to me singing because I'm really not a good singer. But I remember this song wasn't too bad. I named it the Cruft World theme song since the project had really just gotten going. As I recall, the backing tracks are made in Reason, and there's overdubbed, distorted guitar and bass playing alongside that. At that time, I was using a pedal called the RE20 made by Boss. It's sort of like a Hammond organ rotating filter effect, plus it has distortion, so it makes a very psychedelic sort of distortion sound. Later, that pedal burned out, but again, I captured the sound of it in this recording, which is why I encourage everyone to make their own little recordings, even if they're not perfect. You have something to remember your gear by. Let's take a listen to the Craft World theme song. Again, this is probably from 2008 or 9, around that time. Okay, so that was the Craft World theme song. Yeah, you can hear those nice crunchy guitar sounds there, and at the beginning, there's a lot of weird sort of bleepy drum sounds. Most of those would be samples from classic drum machines, or like maybe the Casio Rap Band is one of the ones I thought I heard in that particular track. And they're being processed a bit in Reason, but this is not what you would call like DAW list jams. These are definitely composed in Reason, and then once the Reason bed track was exported, I would go into some other piece of software, probably at the time we called it Cool Edit Pro, and then it became Adobe Audition, and nowadays we would use Audacity for the same kind of thing. So yeah, definitely multi-tracking into a computer. Oh, this one, yeah, even has the years noted down here. So phases were just sort of like I would have ideas, I would have my gear, I would make whatever kind of music. I remember this particular section. We can start with this one. Humble.mp3 is just a bunch of guitar and I think some banjo overdubs. I had a banjo in Shanghai that I saw in a shop going cheap and bought it. And later on in these other recordings, I found my old 4-track, so I was recording my synths directly onto 4-track. I believe at this time I had a Alesis Ion. But before we do that, let's just listen to a little bit of guitar and banjo work from my fake folk periods that I would occasionally go through. Yeah, just strumming along on the old guitars and banjos there. I sold most of my guitars now. I think I would like to practice the bass a bit more, especially if I could get a nice fretless bass and do my best Bill Laswell ambient fretless bass with chorus pedal interpretation or imitation, whatever you want to call it. But I haven't got one right now, so I'm not going to subject you to that. So yeah, this is some more synth music similar to what I made later. These are okay. There's some better ones. Yeah, this one isn't too bad. So let's listen to this. I think I reused this one recently as the backing track for one of my small Eurorack Systems videos. And people said the background music was too distracting, and I understand that. But well, it's one of the shorter ones here. I'll let you listen to one of the shorter ones to not. Yeah, this one's pretty good. Let's try this. Her Center of Gravity. Okay, yeah, I like that weird intermittent note that appears in tune, but kind of buzzy and nasal at the end of the track there. That was definitely recorded onto 4-track if you couldn't tell from all the hiss. And yeah, I hadn't really started getting too heavy into synthesizer collecting at this particular period in time. There was a time in Japan when I had a bunch of analog synths and I had to sell them off when I moved. Though I shipped a couple of the Yamaha CS10 and CS15 back to my hometown and got use out of them later. But this one again is pretty much all presets or slightly modified presets from the Alesis Ion, which is the only keyboard I really used at the time. It's funny too, Croftworld was supposed to be a project where I didn't just create a fictional band, but I created a little fictional universe where there were multiple acts that would work together and collaborate, and they're all just me with different instruments. But like you can see here, I tried to keep track of some of what I did, so I have an interview with a guy from one of those bands. It's just me explaining my process. This may sound very strange, and I can see how you could see it that way. I also got, especially in this early part of Croftworld, I got my buddy Scott to help me out. So in Vancouver, he took a poster, which he put up on one of the, what is this, like a electrical pole where people would post their band posters. So all of these bands are just me, and the show never happened, but I wanted to create the documents that sort of go with this fake universe, so he helped me out by doing that. So shout out to Scott for that. Thank you. And he also made this for me. What I did was I made a zine, and back in the days, a zine was like a magazine made by a small publisher, or probably just one person in a photocopier, and they would interview the rock musicians that they liked and staple together a little document, and it'll probably be black and white, and distribute it to their friends. So here's the Croftworld zine. Boom City was the fictional city that the fictional musical universe was set in. This one is number 7, but there's no number 1 to 6 is actually the first one. So I wrote the words, and then Scott was kind enough to cut it all up and then rework it back together into a hardware sort of scrapbook, I guess you could call it, which he then scanned, and he did all those weird sketches and other bits of layout stuff here. So, again, I don't know why there's a dad with 2 kids and the word vasectomy underneath it, but that's the kind of quote-unquote comedy that zines back in that day would have had. So here's like Walt Jabsco was my ska pseudonym. If I recorded a ska type track, I would attribute it to him. There's other ones here, The King in Yellow. That probably seems like a reference to the first season of, what's that TV show called? It had Matthew McConaughey in it. Anyway, I was there first because King in Yellow is really a Cthulhu reference, but his TV show had it too. Oh, it's called True Detective. If you watch True Detective Season 1, you will recognize that. And if you're a smart person, you'll know who Dr. Benway was, for example. So again, all this stuff, it's all not real, but I thought it would be fun to, instead of just making music, I wanted to make the bands and make the interviews and make the whole scene and synthesize it all out of nothing. And that's what Croftworld was. So that's why there's so many different artists here being credited. There's Walt Jabsco and his ska song, and there's another one there. So I would write down artist names, band names. These ones are all work print, as I said, which is what I called it when I was working on the 4-track. After I got that old 4-track back, I used it until, well, let's see, where does it stop? Yeah, it says April 2009, which means that's probably when the engine of the 4-track stopped working. This one is a good one here. I'm going to mention it. I really like this game, Dwarf Fortress. Most people probably know it as a precursor to Minecraft or an inspiration for Notch to make Minecraft. It was a very complicated game to play, so I would just watch people playing it online. But I decided to make a soundtrack for Dwarf Fortress 2, which as far as I know does not exist, and they didn't ask me to write the soundtrack even if it did. But I got the idea, and then just from imagining the game in my mind, I made up the titles like Alone in the Aluminum Mines and Submarine Base, Escape by Dwarf Helicopter. I don't really know if that's a thing, but the video game doesn't exist, so you might as well make a fake soundtrack for it. But I remember this one. I think this is the one that got the whole EP started. There's a cool clock patch in the Nord Micro Modular, which I did not make, but I sampled it and then put it together with another clock patch that someone else made, and that was sort of the basis for the song. The song sort of grew around that, and when I named it Clock Factory of Death, it led me to the idea to make the fake soundtrack. So why don't we listen to Clock Factory of Death? I want to mention here also, I'd been recording on my computer, and then I moved to the 4-track. When the 4-track died, I couldn't keep going on that, and I didn't want to buy a cassette 4-track. But around that time, I got a device called the Boss Micro BR, which is a 4-track digital portable recording studio. And I sort of went DAW-less by mistake, you could say. I just started recording onto this little portable device instead of into my computer. And I liked doing that because I had some gadgets like the Korg K-oscillator. And I also had at the time I was playing the Nintendo DS, and I had some games like Electroplankton that made very interesting music. They aren't exactly, Electroplankton is halfway between a game and a sequencer. It's really weird. But I wanted to record those sounds, and I was moving away from the computer and more towards recording directly into the Micro BR, which was pretty significant, as we'll see in a couple more songs. So this is really the beginning of that. Let's listen to Clock Factory of Death. Right, so that's that. Anyway, moving on. What other phases are in here? Oh, yeah, okay. I did say I wouldn't make you listen to me sing, but at the time I would even record some relatively bad raps. And here is a beat I made and also a rap by me. So get ready for rapping.
Frank too much, but I'm still the only Frank I know who trained himself to self-deprecate, rap, and play the banjo. Simultaneous. It's way more fun than water polo. Cymbals strapped all up on my knees for my no-hand solo. Others know me as a one-ton, one-hit wonder. Caught me rifling through their hard drives for breaks to plunder. My raps are fictional, like a hoarse whisperer. Just want to make a connection between myself and my 13 listeners. These days I call it narrowcasting. I get a blaster blast in the forest, but is it really blasting? I know I should put more effort into what Limoges used to say, but I'm writing this in bed like it's roast beef Kazantzakis Day. Craft Road really isn't about trying. It's the sound of watching anime with one eye crying. Or better yet, the sound of the Puget Sound, where you can find my albums in the Lost and Found. It's true. Valley Village and shit.
Yes, that's right. That was Father Moo rapping, but you don't have to listen to it anymore. Roast Beef Kazantzakis is a character from the online comic Achewood. If you want to know more, you can go to achewood.com. Okay, the phases of Craft Road were coming to an end. I wouldn't say I was running out of ideas, but I was getting kind of dark, and I made this sort of dark ambient stuff. The names of the songs are Hideous, Scalded, and Aftermath, so you can determine for yourself how listenable that is. And I threw some DJ mixes in here because occasionally I would get a chance to do that, either for my friends or this one I was at The Shelter, which is a nightclub in Shanghai. I would DJ a couple times. But here's a good one. Work print again. So continuing on from the recording of Dwarf Fortress OST, I was kind of into that sound. So this in particular, American Boarfest, was my way of saying I was often sitting around bored and watching TV, and I would have the Korg K oscillator and the headphones plugged into that, and the Korg K oscillator would make a little loop, and I would think that sounded good, so I recorded that loop and then added some overdubs. And as I said, I was also into recording the sounds of the Game Boy games I was playing at the time, or in a few cases PC games like Age of Empires. So a lot of the tracks in this little EP are based on that. Most of the other ones I could remember, but I'm having trouble remembering where exactly these ones are from. So if I start and stop one, don't get angry at me, but I'm looking for a particular track. Let's try this one. That one is definitely the mostly Korg K oscillator. K oscillator was a lot like a little toy, and Korg, I would think, have been, I would say, fairly accused of making devices that are somewhere between toys and instruments. People would say that about the Volcas or the Monotrons. But I think people of my generation, the line between composing music on a computer with a sequencer, especially with modern VSTs, and using a video game the lines are blurring. And before, in my Nord Modular stream, I was joking around by doing a speed run to build a patch, but speed running, of course, comes from the video game community. And I guess what I'm saying is here that this particular EP, I was trying to blur those lines even more and get somewhere between video game soundtrack and music, or legitimize video game soundtracks that they could be music. I'm going to play another one here. Hopefully this is the right one I'm looking for. Okay, that very much was the track I was looking for. So what was going on there was the sequence at the beginning, which sounds like something from a generative Eurorack synth today, is actually the stage called Hannenbow in Electroplankton. And those notes you were hearing were just, I couldn't really control when they were playing or what note they were playing. You have a little tadpole who's bouncing around on leaves, and you can adjust the position of the leaves. But I set it up to make a pleasing little sequence, and I was like, okay, it's working. Quickly record it. And I plugged in the micro BR and recorded it. So then I had that sequence playing at that tempo, and I couldn't use MIDI or something like that to sync it up. So I just tapped the tempo into the chord K oscillator, and then those breakbeats that you heard that join in partway through, I had just been listening to the tempo and trying to match the beat up and start it at exactly the right moment and have the two of them play in time. So it's sort of like a DJ matching one beat from a breakbeat to a record that's already playing. It is a little bit sketchy, and I bet if you timed every beat, some of them would be a little bit off or on, but that's how we do in hip-hop. So again, very much a precursor of the music I do today is often generative. It's often based in video game type tones. And of course, breakbeats have been with me since the beginning. So yeah, some kind of, precursor to that going on here in American Boarfest. I'm running out of time for my little overview. Got to jump ahead. So I liked this project that I was doing with the micro BR. So I decided to sort of up my game, and starting in 2012, I tried to record a track every single day on the micro BR and upload it to SoundCloud. I did not hit that target. What I did do was, by 2014, I had hit, you can see the tracks are numbered here, I managed to hit just about 500. I've got up to 505, and that took me about 3 years, which is a bit over 1,000 days. So I guess I did a song every 2 days for 3 years, approximately. And I say songs, some of these are really more like soundscapes or noise and drone. In fact, I started developing my Eurorack synth around 2013, so the first bits of that were here. 2012, when the project started, I was still in Shanghai, and I had my synth collection there, and had done some stuff with those instruments. So while I still have some time, why don't I just play a track from there? This one is a bit more ambient and weird. You can see the songs have been labeled. Cruftworld is the project. Bad Apples is the musician or fake musician name. And Deep Sea Life is the name of this particular track. I think I like this one because I remember some weird presets came out of the Proteus World 3 rack mount synth. The name is telling me that anyway. So let's take a listen to this one. Okay, so that was just a short little ambient weird piece here. As I said, the process for a lot of these songs was similar. I would make a beat on a gadget like the Chaosilator, or later I got an iPad and started using apps from that to make the background tracks. And later, once the background track was laid down, if it was stereo, it would take up 2 of the 4 tracks in the Micro BR. So there would just be the third and the fourth in mono. I would often overdub maybe a bass line, maybe a melody line, maybe a pad on a hardware synth. I had a few more in my home in Shanghai, the Roland Gaia and also the Yamaha SY22. Especially the SY22 is amazing for pads, and certainly got my money's worth out of that. Here's one I remember. I like this one. Complete History of the Universe. This starts with some very minimalist bleeps as the universe is forming, and then as humanity spreads out through the stars, it turns into some pads and some other weird stuff. I remember this being one of the songs I was happy with from the times back then. So why don't we take a listen to Complete History of the Universe. It only takes 4 minutes and 11 seconds to cover the entire universe. That's a good ROI, I would say. Here we go. Yeah, that definitely sounded like a complete history of the universe to me. So there you go. Certainly going into my ambient phase there. Um, so many strange pieces of music here. I'd like to share all of them. I don't have time to do that, but what's another one I can play for you before we have to go here? I think this one's pretty good from the very end of the series. Celtic Mandala sounds like something Father Moo-ish. Oh, you can see the Father Moo name is already attached to these. So I guess Cruftworld probably officially ended around 500, and the Father Moo persona and the associated issues that go along with it took over. Let's listen to 503 Celtic Mandala. This is from 2014, when the Father Moo project had just started. So yeah, that was Celtic Mandala. You can really hear the hand percussion stuff is a key Father Moo element, and the ambient pads and the generative weird modular synth stuff, especially from the beginning of that track, those digital voices, those are key points. But it wasn't all modular. It started with a lot more Game Boys and gadgets and went through hardware synths and into modular where we are today. So without wasting any more of your time, I just want to say thanks to everyone who listened. I really want to say thanks to everyone who participated in Jamuary 2024. It was awesome. I love you all. I'm absolutely back again next year to do it. And I hope you'll subscribe and listen to my channel. I'll be doing more modular tutorial walkthroughs. And I'm also over on Twitch doing noise and drone streams. So check me out on twitch.tv and write me a message, leave me a comment. Let's work together. Let's make a track together, especially all Jamuary people. I'd love to work with you. You are all geniuses. This is Father Moo signing off. See you next year.